Oh my. Y'all like to hear a bedtime story? This one's called James Dean's Little Bastard. The tales of both Christopher Case and Carl Pruitt share a common theme in that they centered around a curse, which manifested from a paranormal entity. One featured a scorned witch who stalked, tormented, and eventually killed the man who had rejected her. The other, a vengeful spirit of a murderer, which brought retribution upon those who desecrated his gravestone. In either case, the antagonist was marginally personified, and he had a feeling of who or what was responsible. The following story involves a curse which is somewhat different, brought about by an intimate object rather than a clear, sentient intelligence. In this story, the killer is somewhat faceless, inherently soulless, and for that reason, far more terrifying. Renowned artist of both screen and stage, James Dean was born on 8th February 1931. In his early years, he lived in Marion, Indiana, moved to Los Angeles at the age of 5, spent much of his youngest years on his uncle's farm. Though James took part in school play productions, it was not until he attended college that he decided to focus his attention on the acting career that would one day make him a household name. By this time, the 17-year-old Dean had developed a great personal interest in sports car racing and become a regular spectator down at the local track. A move to New York in 1951 saw him appear in a number of TV shows. Many expected his interest in motorsport to subside. During this period, Dean was also awarded a part in the long-running Broadway show, See the Jaguar, the title reference to the Wildcat rather than the vehicle manufacturer. However, in 1953, as soon as he turned 21, Dean sought to emulate his racing idols with the purchase of his first car, a 356 Porche Super Speedster. Though keen to compete, this eye-catching model was undoubtedly a significant investment for the young man. Not least because it was some time before his acting roles were bringing in a reliable income. He once said, "Racing is the only time I feel whole," and thus made a committed decision to try and further both his racing and acting ambitions. James Dean would go on to become a popular name in the amateur racing circuit, running alongside his stage and film work over the next couple of years. Things began to unravel for Dean in 1954 when Warner Brothers, for whom he had made the movies Giant, attempted to ban him from racing altogether, resulting in some tough choices. Spurred on by a powerful sense of adventure, Dean went adamant that he wanted to race competitively, and there was no question that he was an adept and confident amateur racing driver. Nevertheless, some of his closest friends and advisors were worried about the dangers posed by driving at such high speeds and the ever-present risk that an injurious accident would affect his acting career. This left him in a serious dilemma, but rather than heeding these warnings, Dean made a defiant choice. Continued to expand his vehicle collection, initially with the purchase of a Triumph Tiger T110 in 1954. He then went on to race at Palm Springs in March 1955. And in May of the same year, he partook in road races at Minterfield, Bakersfield, and Santa Barbara. Having achieved modest success, Dean enrolled for the road race at Salinas. He traded his 2-year-old speedster, upgrading to a Porche Spider 550, which was capable of speeds of over 140 miles per hour. It came with custom fiberglass paneling, silver in color, and had the number 130 proudly displayed on the front, sides, and the engine cover. The words "Little Bastard" were also painted on the rear cowling. This was applied at Dean's request by pinstriper Dean Jeffries. Bill Hickman, who'd worked with Dean as a stuntman, a dialogue coach on Giant, had jokingly called Dean himself a little bastard, and this was to become a running joke, now attributed to the vehicle. The self-confessed thrill-seeker had gotten himself a newer, faster racing car, one of only 90 in this range ever made. He hoped that this was enough to give him an edge come race day. However, it was to come as a great shock to friends and fans alike when James Dean suffered a devastating car crash, not on the racetrack, but on the road. A collision in which he would tragically lose his life. Motoring accidents were relatively common, even in the 50s, though there were far fewer fatalities than there are today. He would be mourned by millions in the weeks and months that followed. The tragedy itself occurred on 30th September 1955, as James Dean was driving his new Porche Spider, accompanied by his mechanic, Rudolph Woolrich, who was in the passenger seat. Bill Hickman was driving Ford station wagon close behind, and the route had been carefully planned to incorporate quiet roads, which would allow the Spider to reach similar speeds to what it could achieve on the track. At around 5:45 p.m., James Dean was heading in the direction of California Polytechnic at an estimated speed of 85 miles per hour when a black and white Ford two-door coupe came out from the adjoining intersection on Route 46 near Colam. The two vehicles collided, flipping Dean's car into the air. The two-door, meanwhile, skidded nearly 12 meters upon impact. It is still hotly debated to this day whether Dean was speeding at the time of the accident, or whether he had in fact slowed down. Either way, there is no concrete evidence to support either claim. In any case, Dean suffered multiple broken bones and internal bleeding, striking the steering wheel with his head, which caused the actor's neck to snap violently. Whilst ambulance crews attended the scene quickly, there was unfortunately little they could do. He was taken to Paso Robles War Memorial Hospital and pronounced dead within the hour. His mechanic, meanwhile, had not worn his seatbelt. He had been thrown from the vehicle, but escaped with his life, albeit with serious injuries, including a broken hip and jaw. The driver of that coupe, a 23-year-old student by the name of Donald Turpinspeed, was relatively unharmed, but bruised and in shock. An inquest was held into Dean's death by the San Luis Obispo court, and Turnspeed was taken to give evidence. The court suggested that the low profile of the coupe, combined with the high speeds, were key contributing factors, but attributed no blame to either driver. A verdict was returned of accidental death without criminal intent. Dean himself may not have been entirely surprised that he had died in a car crash. He is quoted as saying, "What way better to die? It's fast and clean, and you go out in a blaze of glory." That said, he could not have known that he would crash that Spider within 9 days of having purchased it. Multiple sources, including contemporaries, have commented on Dean apparently having problems with his car in the time leading up to his death. Given the Spider's unfortunate accident, some believe the vehicle was evil and cursed with bad luck. Chillingly, various accounts corroborate that anybody directly associated with that car was at risk of being affected, potentially even harmed, by the curse of the little bastard. One example of this can be attested by a crash survivor, Rolf Withrich, Dean's mechanic. He successfully went on to work with the Porche rally team, yet he too would be involved in a crash in his own vehicle some years later. Meanwhile, a sequence of events involving the car's wreckage are somewhat chilling, to say the least. Car designer George Barris, later known for designing the Batmobile, brought Dean's car to sell for parts. But as soon as his team entered the garage, the car's engine slipped, breaking the legs of one of the mechanics. Physician Troy McHenry brought the engine of the car from Barron's in October 1956. Though he fared no better with it, when racing the vehicle, which housed the Spider's engine at the Pomona Fair, it spun wildly out of control and hit a tree, killing McHenry in the process. Moreover, another race at Pomona, William Eckrich, who had coincidentally purchased the transmission from James Dean's car, had his vehicle flipped over in a similar manner to Dean's fatal accident. Thankfully, Esrick survived, but again, not without sustaining serious injuries. In the light of all these events, Barris became uncomfortable with the little bastard wreckage. Though he proceeded to sell the tires to an interested buyer from New York, the curse was said to strike again when those tires, now fitted to another vehicle, all blew at the same time while driving, almost causing another collision in the process. In another incident, a plucky adolescent slipped and gashed his arm when trying to steal the steering wheel. With little else to lose, Barris decided to loan the car out to the California Highway Patrol for use for their training exercises. To his disbelief, the CHP later reported that their garage had been burned down just a week later. But despite the devastating fire, little bastard had strangely remained intact. At this point, Barris wanted little more to do with this vehicle. It had caused at least 6 injuries and 2 deaths by that time, and he thought it best to take little bastard out of commission for good. It was taken to an exhibition in Sacramento, but whilst on display, the car suddenly slipped off the exhibition stand, breaking the hip of a teenage visitor. Lorry driver George Barris became the haunted vehicle's next unfortunate victim. He was tasked with transporting the Porche when it suddenly fell from his flatbed truck, crushing and killing him inside the cab. Traders and automobile enthusiasts talked about how James died too young and how the car didn't seem to want to go to another owner. The mishaps and accidents continued until 1960, when the car mysteriously vanished after Barris had requested that it be transported back to Los Angeles. However, when the transporter reached its destination, Barris opened the back trailer to find that it was empty. A reward of $1 million was offered for its return, but nothing came of it. Apparently, a few parts are with Dean's relatives, and more recently, a part was apparently sold on eBay, but its authenticity is yet to be proved. The stupefying events concerning the wreckage of Little Bastard now sit alongside the tragedy of the star's early death. Strangely, it will not be the only car to apparently inflict upon its owner some kind of hex. Ever since the motor car was invented, there have been many counts of haunted or cursed vehicles. Not least among them was a golden 1964 Dodge 330, dubbed the Golden Eagle, a car which was not only suspected of being responsible for several vicious murder-suicides at the hands of its various owners, but one also inspired a Stephen King novel, Christine. That's a story for another time. Good night.